Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Lucas with us, and Lucas is we became friends just a few minutes ago, but he does really good stuff. He's really good in apologetics and a lot of other stuff. He has a YouTube channel. It's called Deflate, and we have posted the link in the description. You have to check that out. Okay, so I'll be asking more questions about his channel even before we move into the session. Thank you so much, Lucas, for joining us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lloyd, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Tell me more about your channel, Lucas. So even before we move into the session,
yeah. Well, I guess the main thing to know about my channel is that I basically took online or launched online what I've been doing offline or on the ground in Beirut, Lebanon for the past 6 or 7 years. Basically, I lead a Bible study every week. It's happening tonight, actually, every Thursday, for like a Bible study that is open for skeptics, which is usually attended by around 15 people, most of them like non-believers. And what we basically do is just we read one chapter of the Bible. We're in the Gospel of Matthew at the moment, and then the space is open for people to ask questions. And we host discussion nights like once or twice a month where we pick, any of the big topics that feature in apologetics, such as, is morality objective or subjective? And then we invite friends. We've got good connections into atheist clubs and science clubs. And we create a space for people to come together and discuss these questions. And basically people have been telling me, well, you should kind of, since you're doing this and facilitating all this on the ground, you should be doing this online as well. And it's taken me some time to kind of push myself to do it. But last year, the time was, I guess, ripe and ready. And so I went online, and I'm just trying. I'm still pretty new. I mean, the channel has been going for 1 year only. And I just try to, put my stuff out there, try to encourage believers and to equip them with, arguments that hopefully give them confidence to stand their ground. But also I'm passionate about creating a space where people from different ends of the spectrum meet. I mean, in my house, those discussion nights would happen in my house, usually in my living room. And I would have, we would normally have 25 to 30 people from all sorts of backgrounds joining, and then, rigorously discussing this stuff, but also becoming friends in the process of doing so. And that's kind of what I'm passionate about in the online space too, to, give good arguments, but also have a space where people can actually be friends with each other, even as they disagree, so that's kind of my passion, and that's my heart for what I'm doing online.
Okay. Okay. Another interesting question that I want to ask you is, how do you disagree with them? I mean, how does that happen? Will there be any heated conversation, or how will that go?
No, I mean, basically the way this works, I mean, here when we have those discussion gatherings or Bible studies, it's
recording in progress.
It's basically again a topic is put up. Everyone knows well what the evening is about or what the event is about, and then usually I or another person, maybe even an atheist or sometimes a Buddhist, would open up with their perspective on a specific question. Take, why does the universe exist, or why is there something rather than nothing? And then one person would give their view, just for the conversation to start off somewhere and for there to be a reference point. And then there is space for everyone to chime in. And it's obviously, sometimes it's challenging, if you have 20 people discussing deep stuff, it's kind of hard to, give everyone space enough. And then you have different characters. Some they like to talk a lot, others they're more they're more restrained. And so it's again, I think that the thing is to help people get clarity on important questions, but also again to help people make friends and get them an experience of, well, you can really be friends with people that disagree with you. And here in the Middle East, I mean, as you may know, it's, religious disagreement has been, is a big potential for social strife and whatnot. And I think it's that's what people appreciate a lot. They can come together in our space, discuss big questions which you're not supposed to discuss in the public sphere, and meet people from like different faith groups and whatnot, and have like get mixed up together and have a good time together. Yeah.
All right. Now let's go to the questions now. Okay.
Sure.
So the first question that we have is, how would you define the truth? The word truth.
Yeah, I would say that truth is what corresponds to reality. What corresponds to reality is truth. So any that represents what reality actually is truth. Now, I think that is a pretty straightforward and common sense description of truth. I think it makes intuitive sense. It is also a philosophical, one of the classical philosophical descriptions of truth. There are two more descriptions or notions or theories of truth that are usually discussed in philosophy. And one of them is the coherence theory of truth, which says that everything that is coherent within itself is true. And the other theory is the pragmatic theory of truth. That is like basically everything that works is true. But I think there are very good reasons to go with the so-called correspondence theory of truth, which says, again, what corresponds to reality is true. That's how I would capture it.
Right. The follow-up question that will be is, does truth exist?
Yeah, I think definitely truth exists. I mean, it's, again, given that there is a reality, whatever reality looks like, and given that truth is what corresponds to reality, well, truth exists. And I guess to say that truth doesn't exist is a self-contradiction, because whoever makes that statement and says truth doesn't exist, he or she implies that this statement itself is true. So in this sense, you can't say that truth doesn't exist, because by making that claim, you're actually implying that there is at least this claim that is true, i.e., or namely, the claim that truth does not exist. And yet again, this claim is implied to be true. And so yes, definitely truth must exist, because it is incoherent to say that it doesn't exist.
I think Frank Turek puts it like this. Dr. Frank Turek puts it like this. It's like a self-defeating statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It defeats itself, or again, it contradicts itself.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you
right.
so much for that. Is the truth absolute, or is it relative? And that's my next question.
Well, in the end, if the way reality works is absolute. Yes, true in this sense, truth, again, the true description of the world is absolute. And you can, I guess, take an example.
Lucas, even before that, can you explain what is absolute truth and what is relative truth, and then maybe we can.
Yeah. Well, I guess by absolute is meant that it is, it is unchangeable. It doesn't change according to times or persons who ponder the truth. To say that truth is absolute means that it's applicable to everyone. I mean, take an example. You're free to claim that gravity doesn't apply to you. You're free to say, well, this truth is relative. And by relative, we mean, well, it depends. It depends on opinion. It depends on, time of the truth being pondered, or on culture in which this truth is being discussed, and so on and so forth. But, again, to exemplify what I'm saying here, that truth is absolute, again, take the example of gravity. Now, everyone is free to say, well, I don't believe in gravity. I don't believe that gravity is absolute, or that it absolutely holds. Well, you're free to say that, but when you jump off a building, you will still fall down. You will still end up, at the bottom of that building. You won't fly up into the sky. And so in this sense, the truth of gravity applies to you whether you like it or not. And in this sense, when we bring it to the big question of whether God exists or not, let's say, well, if God exists, well, he exists whether you like it or not. And you are free to say that, well, he doesn't exist, and my truth is that he doesn't exist. Well, but in the end, there is a true answer to that question. And similarly, I mean, this goes for us Christians. If God does not exist, if it turns out that he doesn't exist, us believing in God does not make it true that God exists. So in this sense, yes, truth is absolute. Whatever reality looks like, it is the reality for everyone. You cannot escape it.
All right. The next question that I have is there truth in anything else except science?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes. And I guess I can give a couple of reasons here, and I think it's important for people to think through that. And the first reason is, again, that to say that there is truth only in science is a self-undermining statement, a self-undermining view. Why? Well, let's say, again, let's take the statement, only science establishes truth, or only science leads us to truth. Well, this statement is not a scientific statement. There is no way you can test or verify that statement scientifically. You cannot put it into a test tube. You cannot take it to a lab. You cannot apply any chemicals to it to find out whether it is actually true. Instead, it is a philosophical statement. It says that, it's the philosophy that only science establishes truth. But if only science establishes truth, then, and I make a philosophical rather than a scientific statement, well, then this statement itself is wrong. So again, as we said in the case of absolute truth, to say that only science establishes truth is self-undermining, because the statement itself is not based on science. And yet the claim itself demands that science establish truth. And then, on another level, I think it's important because people are, it's fancy these days to believe that only science is reliable as a source of knowledge and of truth. But really, many people don't realize that science itself is based on presuppositions that are not verifiable by the sciences. I mean, science is based on logic. The laws of logic are fundamental to the quest of science. And yet the laws of logic are not, again, verifiable scientifically. They have to be assumed in order to do science, and they cannot be proven by science. So it's kind of, I would say, cheap or, not quite honest to say that science establishes truth when science itself relies on truths that are not scientific. Or, take another example. Every scientist or the scientific community usually believes that you should not lie in your research, that you should not lie about your data that you present in your research. Well, but how does science tell you that? Science doesn't give you the axiom of honesty. That's a moral truth we believe in. And so again, science cannot even progress or move forward without assuming truths that are not scientific. And that's why it is not true, and it cannot be true, that only science delivers truth.
Yeah.
If I'm going too fast, just
Sure.
back and stuff. Okay?
Can you give us some examples? Like you said, science. There's no truth in any. I asked this question: is there truth in anything else except science? And you gave an example of how people have been using. Can you give us some examples and make it even more clear?
Yeah. Well, again, let's take the theories of truth we talked about. Again, philosophers discuss, well, is the correspondence theory of truth the best one, or is the coherence theory of truth the best one? Now, again, science believes that it can establish truth, but it doesn't actually comment on the theories of truth. That's a philosophy thing. That's the job of the philosophers.
Yeah.
And then again, in the realm of morality, you know, most people would hold it to be true that you are doing something wrong if you torture a baby. Most people would hold that to be true. Even, you know, we have more confidence in the truth claim that it is wrong to torture a baby than we have confidence in many truth claims of science. You know, many claims of science are updated as time goes by, but you know, the notion that you should not kill an innocent human being or torture babies and that sort of stuff, well, these truths have been, you know, they've been pretty well established. And so yeah, I also believe that it is true that my wife loves me and that I love her. Now, this cannot be proven by science, but I'm extremely confident of that. And so this goes back to, I mean, call it intuition, or you could even call it, you know, well, intuition is a pretty good place to start with. Now, can this be proven by science? No, it can't. But I'm very confident that my wife and I love each other. So there is, and I would say that, you know, as you go through daily life, you can be confident of knowledge, even though it's not scientifically proven. Well, you know, for example, you go into Starbucks or you go into whatever coffee shop, you order a coffee, and you are pretty confident that that the guy behind the bar is not kind of mixing rat poison into your drink. Now, do you apply scientific methods that lead you to that confidence? No, you just use common sense. And so in this sense, you know, common sense is also, well, not always a reliable guide to truth, but it can guide you to truth. And so most people, again, even though it's fancy and maybe also in the internet world or on the university campus to say that only science delivers truth, well, hardly anyone lives like that because, you know, we are confident in things, even though no scientist has ever helped us find out that these things are real. Again, like love, or, you know, that you can trust at least certain people, and that sort of moral laws apply and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. All right. I think you went to the next question. Maybe, maybe you can elaborate that a little bit more. What is objective morality and what is subjective morality? And which one do you believe in and why? I mean, I think I asked 4 questions, but yeah, you can.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Thank you. Well, I guess to define the terms, when we speak of something that is objective, we're saying that this thing is independent of human opinion. For example, it is independent of human opinion whether gravity like applies or not. You know, whether you like it or not, if I, you know, drop I have an SD card here. If I drop this SD card, it's just going to drop to the ground, you know. That's objectively truth. It doesn't matter whether you like it or whether someone believes in it or not. Well, it just happens. So that's objective. Subjective is to say that the thing in question is indeed dependent of human opinion. For example, for me to say that chocolate ice cream is the best, well, that's not objective, you know, because you might say, well, I think strawberry ice cream is the best. And so tastes, by definition, are subjective. They depend on human opinion. Or again, favorite food or favorite drinks. I mean, these are questions that are subjective. That means they do depend on human opinion. And so applied to morality, the question now becomes, well, are there moral truths that are independent of human opinion, or are moral truths, the question is, are there moral truths that are independent of human opinion, or are they dependent on human opinion? And I believe that morality is objective. That is, it is independent of human opinion. Again, pick the example I mentioned already. I think it is objectively wrong, no matter what anyone thinks. It is objectively wrong that, to torture a baby. It is objectively wrong to kill innocent human beings. It is objectively wrong to sexually abuse human beings, and so on and so forth. That's what I believe in. Now, most people, or a lot of people, think that this is not the right way to look at it. They think that all these things are subjective, but I believe there are a number of reasons why, like, a subjective moral view or a subjective view on morality doesn't quite make sense.
Okay. So what do the atheists and the agnostics believe in? I think they believe in the subjective moral values and objective, right?
Yeah, well, people take different stances. I mean, it's, if God exists, then it's pretty easy to argue for objective morality, because what you can then say is that, well, moral truths, or what we should do and should not do, these things are established independent of human opinion, that is, by God, who is not a human being, but a divine being. So God imposed or established moral truths for us, and that's why they're independent of human opinion. But if you don't believe in God, if you are a naturalist, if you believe that matter is all that exists, well, it's going to be hard to make a case for objective morality. And that's why, well, in the end, the kind of the entity that could give or could establish morality is a human being, like a thinking human being. But then the question becomes that, well, who are you to say that your code is the right one? And who are you to say that your code is the right one? And that's why, if you don't have God in the picture, it's kind of hard to make a case for objective morality. And I mean, some people try. It's not that it hasn't been done. I mean, in fact, on my YouTube channel, I've interacted with a guy called Cosmic Skeptic, who's a big atheist YouTuber. And so he doesn't believe in God, but at the same time, he tries to establish morality that is objective, even though he hasn't God in the picture of his worldview. So people do try that. But then there are other people who think that, well, it's just all subjective. It really doesn't matter. Well, you do this and you do that. We can't say that this is right and this is wrong. It just is, like taste for ice cream. Well, you like that, I like this, and that's it. So yeah.
Yeah, all right. I think I've met a lot of people, and they've said, I think Hinduism is true for me, and few Muslims say that Islam is true for me, and few atheists say that it is true for me. So my next question that I'm going to ask you is: Are all religions true?
No, I mean, they're not. I mean, and they can't be true altogether, because they make contradictory claims. Again, I think the classical example is to speak, like to compare Islam and Christianity. I mean, Islam classically claims that Jesus wasn't crucified on the cross, and Christianity claims that he was. Christianity claims that Jesus is divine. Islam rejects the idea that Jesus is divine. So here's the thing: either Christianity is true or Islam is true. They cannot both be true, because if one says A and the other says non-A, A is false, the other say A is right. Well, both cannot be true. It just doesn't work by the sheer laws of logic. Now, it could also be that both of them are false, that both Christianity and Islam are false. Maybe Jesus never existed in the first place and whatnot. So Christianity got it wrong, Islam got it wrong. But the only thing that cannot be is that they are both true, Yeah, and so this you can apply this in all sorts of ways to all religions. It's I mean, in many of the Eastern religions, ultimate reality is impersonal. The ultimate goal is for you to be sucked into some sort of infinite consciousness, the infinite consciousness behind the cosmos. You kind of lose your personality in the process. Well, again, Christianity claims that ultimate reality is personal. There's a personal God, and you're made for a relationship as a person with that personal God, a relationship that is meant for all eternity. Well, again, these things, they don't go together. Either God or the divine is personal, or it is not. So that's why it doesn't make sense to say that all religions are true. Now, having said that, I'm still happy to affirm that there may be truth in religions. Islam says that God is one. Now, I'm happy to agree with that. It's just the question is, well, how is he one? I believe that he's Trinitarian one. Muslims don't believe that. Islam says that, well, and many religions say, Eastern religions as well, they would say, well, you ought to be, loving and kind. Yeah, sure. Like this sounds pretty true. The Bible says the same thing. So I guess we have some ground to agree on. Again, Islam says God is the judge. Yes, that's right. I mean, God is the judge, even in Christianity. So here's the thing. There is truth with a small t, if you want, with a small t, written with a small t in all religions. Many religions make claims that are true, that describe reality to a certain extent right. But it's not the case that all religions are true in the capital T sense, in the sense that they are ultimately true. That doesn't work. Only, like in the end, only one religion can be ultimately true, or none of them, but all of them being true, that doesn't quite work.
I think I've been engaging with a lot of Muslims, Hindus, and a lot of other people from other religious worldview. I mean, and they say that is true for you, but not for me. And
yeah.
And how will you tackle that? I mean,
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, again, that's a classical, and people saying that's true for you and not for me. Well, I guess here's, I think, what is important to realize. Many people, we should have these discussions with a personal sensitivity, or call it a pastoral heart or care, like with care. We shouldn't just be trying to win arguments or just look at, well, what's the argument? Let me try how I can, prove Christianity. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to make a case for Christianity. However, it's also important to realize that many people come to these conversations with a longing for love and relationship. I believe many, especially young people, are very lonely, and they, they kind of, even though they may not say that, they want to have real friends. And so I think part of how this expresses itself is that they don't want, they feel that, well, if I can just agree with everyone else, if I can, if I don't challenge other people, then I have kind of a higher, then I can't be friends with them, or I don't want to offend anyone, and that sort of stuff. And I believe, we should, in this sense, we should take that seriously when people say, well, it's true for you, but not for me. I think part of that is, hey, man, like I don't want to offend anyone, and I'd rather just be friends. And I think as a follower of Jesus, you should listen to that well, because again, part of that claim is, hey, man, let's be friends and let's not fight. And I think in this sense, it's, it doesn't make sense to say that something is true for you and it's not true for me. The truth is true for everyone. Again, gravity applies to everyone. If God exists, he is God of all. He is Lord of all, whether you like it or not. And so I would say, I would try to point that out to people, that truth is the truth for all, but that even, and we ought to, or we should be a good example, that even when we disagree with people, we can be good friends, and we can take care of each other. So I think this is very important. Again, it's something I'm very passionate about. It's, I'm passionate about good arguments for the faith, and about, encouraging people in their faith by giving good arguments and by helping them think clearly. But I'm also passionate to encourage people to build relationships with those who don't believe, because I think there is tremendous value in walking a journey, like a personal journey with a person, instead of just trying to prove Christianity to them. You know, in fact, I believe unless you really walk with a person, you're going to have a hard time convincing them that Christ is the way.
I think that's so important, right? You know, a long-term relationship with people will
Yeah.
really help. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very true. I mean, so I believe, you know, whenever you, you know, since, you know, you're doing a Bible study for skeptics and all that, you know, uh, when you disagree with an skeptic, sometimes they might be offensive, and how will you deal that?
Yeah. That's a very good question. I think we should be, you know, gracious. We should be like patient with people. I mean, I've had people come to our Bible study like very angry, you know, angry people, like angry atheists, you can say, like verbally abusive to others, towards others. And that can be challenging. But again, I think it's important to say, to realize, well, you know, our job as believers is to love others, and to love people who may even turn out to be our enemies. And it's the love that will draw them, and it's the love and trust that will make them listen. And so I think we should challenge ourselves to, again, we shouldn't just be thinking arguments, but we should be thinking people. You know, let's win people for Christ. Let's not, you know, win arguments against other people. I think this is really important. Now, obviously, you know, if a person is just being rude in a conversation, I mean, for example, I've talked to people who would constantly interrupt me because they're just so, you know, they have a hard time listening and kind of staying silent. Then I would say, hey man, if please just allow, you know, you ask me something, well, let me respond. And if you interrupt me, this just doesn't help. I think this is, you know, fair enough. Yeah, but again, I would, you know, I think our primary goal is to love people, and in the course of doing so, helping them see that Christianity is like a very reasonable option. And it's not that our primary goal, that it works the other way around. Our primary goal and job is not to show that Christianity is reasonable and then to love people, but loving people comes first. And again, as part of the expression of that is to be, again, to offer apologetics, to offer good arguments. But again, I think the person comes first and then comes the argument. I think this is key.
True. Thank you so much, Lucas. That was a really, that was a personal question that we had. Thank you so much for answering that. The next question that you have is, how will you test if something is true or not? It can be Islamic worldview, or it can be Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity or anything. How will you test whether something is true or not?
Well, this is a really big question. I mean, I would compare it, or one of the authors I read compared it to a detective coming on a crime scene. Now, you know, and here's what he meant. We are all born into this world. And as we grow up and as we think about things, we realize, well, there is such a thing as a moral dimension to our lives. You know, we feel like, well, okay, there are certain ways to behave which are good, and certain ways that are not good. And then we also see, well, there is the whole realm of science and technology, and it's fascinating. And we also realize, well, there is the realm of beauty, and the realm of relationship, and the realm of, well, you know, emotional needs. Then there is the question of suffering. Why is there so much suffering? And so the question now is, well, how are you going to make sense of all of this? You know, these are very different questions. You know, technology and science has nothing to do with beauty and aesthetics, or the question of, well, how can I have a fulfilling relationship with other people or with my, you know, significant other? But these are all things that matter to us tremendously. And so I think the way you test whether a worldview or a religion is true is by seeing whether it can make sense of all this data. Again, it's, you know, whether it can kind of solve for you the crime scene that is life, you know, with all these different facets and and dimensions that are so different from each other, and yet they're so important to us and so kind of all like ever present. And yeah, and so I would say, and I guess here's kind of usually how I what I think is one of the most compelling cases for Christianity, and it's this. I believe that one of the most defining features of reality is the problem of suffering. You know, many people ask themselves, well, just in general, well, why is there suffering? And why do I actually suffer? You know, why do I, or my mom, or my child, or my friend, why do we have to go through so much pain or disease or whatnot? And I think this is something that bothers us deeply. It's probably the most kind of significant question a person can ever ask himself or herself. And here's what I think. In the end, the reality of suffering is like, or when you go through suffering, what you need is fellowship and company and empathy. You know, when you go through pain, be it like physically or emotionally, it like right explanations or even scientific explanations, they aren't that compelling. You know, I mean, think of a tragedy you went through, and most probably what helped you was not so much explanations of why you're going through this. Now, explanations may give some sort of context and give you some sort of calm, but they're really not what you need. Instead, what you need when you go through suffering is someone who is there with you. You know, someone who gives you a hug and says, well, I really understand what you, and especially someone who could say, well, I actually know how you're feeling right here because I've gone through the same thing. That is the most, I think, healing thing that can happen to a person who goes through suffering, is to have someone who is there, who says, well, I'm here, I'm right here with you. And like, I'm right here by your side, and whatever you go through, I will not leave you. And in fact, I've gone through the same thing or something very similar. Here I am. I completely feel with you. And I think what is so compelling about Christianity is that it offers this exact thing in Christ, in the sense that, well, God, the ultimate thing, ultimate reality, ultimate truth, steps down into the ugliness and the messiness of our world and goes to the cross, experiences the ultimate suffering there is, which is death. And then, as Hebrews says, is, well, because he's done that, he can understand us. He has empathy with us in our suffering. And so I believe that's what makes Christianity so compelling above all other religions, because no other philosophy or religion will claim that there is ultimate reality stepped down and actually went through everything you can possibly go through. And therefore God, the ultimate, is right there. He can feel right there with you. And so this is, again, take the aspect of suffering to human life, test what is, the question of, well, how do you test what is true? I would say that, given that Christianity gives this most compelling kind of answer or response to suffering, which is that God himself has become part of it, it makes it ring true, or it makes it, well, yeah, that's exactly what we need. So yeah, that's just one example. I hope this makes sense.
True. Yes, thank you so much, Lucas. That answered our question. And as a follow-up question, how will you build up a case for Christianity? I mean, I believe, I think you already answered that, but, can you elaborate that and give more?
Sure. Well, I think the thing I just said, again, the case from suffering, so to speak, and it's more an existential or an emotion, you could even say like an emotional kind of case, I think is a powerful one. And then, I mean, obviously, I would always start with the person of Jesus. I think Jesus is a compelling figure for everyone, no matter what religious background or non-religious background they come from. Just again, the sheer charisma or values and love he stood for or stands for is what compels people. And then obviously, that there's also a more like the technical aspects to making a case for Christianity. The Gospels or the New Testament are reliable. There is good reasons to trust that these accounts can be taken at face value. There's also very good reasons to believe in the resurrection. In fact, one of the biggest atheist figures of the last century, Anthony Flew, said that the evidence for the resurrection is pretty compelling, or like it's a very well attested miracle. He said it's the best attested miracle in all religions. The resurrection is key, and then obviously arguments like, well, nothing can exist unless it is caused by something. So you need a cause behind the universe, and then you can make a case for God from there. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of avenues you can take in setting up a case for Christianity. But again, I would definitely start with the person of Jesus. That is just the most, I think it's the easiest way to start. It's something that people connect with, and you take it from there.
All right. And for the people who are watching, if you have questions related to the resurrection or the evidence for Christianity, you can check our channel. We have a session. We have recorded a session with Frank Turek, and he built a case for Christianity, and you can check that out in our channel. And thank you, Lucas, for answering that question. And the next question that we have is, if the God of the Bible is true, why didn't he force us to love him?
Well, it's because I believe the notion of forcing someone to love someone is incoherent. It's love has to be chosen in order for it to be true love. I cannot force someone, again, I cannot force someone to love me back, not because, I'm incapable of forcing someone, but because the idea itself doesn't make sense. Just like I cannot force someone to draw, or I cannot draw a square circle. It's not because, I'm not an artist, but I can draw a couple of things. I can draw, figures and rabbits and dogs and houses. I don't mind. But to say that I cannot draw a square circle is to say that, well, I cannot do it because logic doesn't allow me to do so. And so in the same sense, logic doesn't allow that forced love can even exist, because love has to be chosen. Unless love is freely chosen, it isn't deserving of the term love. And I think that's why God cannot force us to love him, because the idea itself doesn't make sense. And in the end, I mean, God is interested exactly in a real loving relationship. He isn't interested in people just, kind of realizing and putting in their minds the information that, there is a God up in the heavens. That's great. The epistles say that James says, well, even the demons believe that there is a God and they tremble. So what good does that do if you just know that God exists? He is interested in you loving him back, in a real relationship of gratitude and of trust and of faithfulness. And for that to happen, you need to be able to choose that, because you cannot be forced to trust someone or to love someone or to be faithful to someone. In order for all of these things to be genuine, you have to choose it. And that's why God cannot force us to love him. And because he is love, he is essentially loving. And because his goal is to invite us into a loving relationship with him, he is, logic tells us that he, this invitation comes with the package of freedom and comes with the package of autonomy. You are free to choose whether you want to love God or you don't want to love God. But in order for this choice to be real and for your choice to love God to be real, you cannot be forced to do it.
True. Thank you so much. That was really brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucas, for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So the next question that we have is, why do you think why do you think that people shun the truth, and what do you think are the reasons for that? Even
Yeah.
though, let's say, I'm giving in a solid evidence for Christianity, and even when I ask him this question, will you become a Christian if Christianity is true? And
Yeah.
and the response that I usually get is no.
Yeah. This is a very, very good question. And again, I think it taps into a spiritual truth that we need to be aware of when we interact with people. And it's the following. Well, let me tell you two stories. I know a girl here in Lebanon from a Muslim background, from a quite religious Muslim background, who had like a very rare case of cancer. And like she couldn't, well, like it was a brain tumor kind of thing, which caused her immense pain, sleepless nights for months. She couldn't really sleep. And so in the end, she was set to go to the States to undertake an operation for which she has some 0.7% of survival. Like from her kind of cancer, there were like 17, and she's like, she's a student, she's a very smart young lady. Like 70 known cases of her kind of condition in the whole world. So she was going to go to some place in the States where the best doctor who is best informed about this condition was going to do an operation on her, from which she might not have come out alive anyway, but that was the only option. Otherwise she would have died of cancer. Anyway, the night before she traveled, she had a Christian pray over her for the first time. She was prayed over in the name of Jesus. She goes home. She falls asleep for the first time in months. She's able to sleep like so deeply that her family actually thinks she died. She already died, because she's just, she passes out for the whole night. And she says, well, the morning I wake up, well, I knew I was healed. I just knew it. I knew I was healed, and I didn't have to go to the States anymore for this operation. So she goes to the doctor, they do a brain scan, the tumor is gone, okay? And she says, well, I knew that Jesus healed me. I knew that it was because this other lady called upon the name of Jesus Christ that I was healed. Now, is she a follower of Christ now? No, she's not. And it's, for whatever reason, she is not. And it's probably because she has a career she wants to pursue. There are pressures from family and so on and so forth. Second story, I know a girl also, so from a Muslim background, went into, new age, kind of wild sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle, super wild, and then gets confronted with Christianity by, just being exposed to certain people, has a couple of supernatural encounters with Jesus, and but it takes her time to come to faith. Now, this is what she told me. She said, well, Lucas, I knew far long, like I could have converted to Christianity far earlier. She said, I could have decided to follow Christ far earlier. But then she said, well, I didn't. And it's not because I didn't believe that it was true. I was already convinced that it was true, but I didn't want to give up on my, sexually liberal lifestyle. I knew that if I were to follow Christ, there were moral demands on my life, and that would have included the way I, the way I live my sex life. And so here's what I think. Ultimately, what is following Jesus about? It is about you submitting lordship over your life to Christ. You not being Lord of your own life, but making Christ the Lord of your life. And this step is, well, it is ultimately a step of humility. It means that, well, I'm not the master of my life anymore. It's Christ. And I think this might be the main reason why people resist evidence. It's not because they don't find it compelling. Now, I take people seriously who say that, well, I can't believe it. I'm still skeptical. Well, yeah, sure. But I know, there are enough people out there who would say that, or who are fully aware that Christianity is rational, but exactly because they know what it entails, which is submitting your life to Christ as your Lord, they don't want to go for it. And so I think, that is what the Bible talks about. It's the human pride. It's the original sin of you wanting to know better what life is about and what you want to do. So yeah, I think that's the main reason why people would resist the truth. And then there are, I think, minor reasons. They're still important, but they're not as key or as ultimate as the thing I just described, which is that people may have had really bad experiences with religious people, and so they don't want to kind of get in touch with religion again. People may have had specifically bad experiences with Christians or with churches, and again, I think these things are to be taken seriously. Look at the person. Be aware that you're dealing with a person who may have gone through some real hurts and some real kind of heartbreaking experiences, and that's why this may be part of the reason why they push back. And so only if you build trust can you kind of bring healing to those kind of things.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories, Lucas.
Yeah.
As a follow-up after listening to the second story, I have a follow-up question, and I think the question is, can we have both truth and happiness? Because I believe, after listening to the story, that the second girl, I think she chose the other life, she, assuming that was, she wanted to seek for happiness and all that. So my question is that, can we have both truth and happiness?
Yes, definitely. But I think that the problem is that people have a shallow understanding of happiness. Happiness may not be the right, term to describe what people are looking for. I think people are really looking for, like satisfaction and fulfillment. And happiness is mainly, and I mean, many people talk about happiness and they want to be happy. But what is meant here is, immediate pleasure. Well, I want to be happy. I want to, watch a good movie. I want to be happy. I want to have a nice meal. I want to be happy. I want to go for a drink with my friends. Now, these things are all good. There's nothing wrong with that. But, the problem is that, you're going for something too shallow and too cheap if this is all there is. I mean, Christ invites us into a relationship with God himself, the God of love. Christ calls us to be in relationships that are truly loving and where you experience true faithfulness. Like Christ calls us to serve and to be, to experience the joy of serving. Now, these things are all, I mean, they bring happiness, but they bring much more than happiness. I think they bring fulfillment. And, Jesus says that ultimately your way to a full life is by following me, and it's exactly by you actually doing what I say rather than you doing what you want to do. And so I think this is kind of, again, this is where people are challenged to let go, challenged to trust that, what Christ offers is, him taking care of me and him bringing me to fulfillment, not happiness, fulfillment. And fulfillment might even mean you going through suffering so that you can, so that you can get to what Christ has for you. But I have to trust that it is going to be Christ's way and not my way. And this is challenging, for sure. It's challenging. And so definitely, yes, we can experience truth and happiness. But I think if we embrace the truth that Christ has for us and the challenging call that he invites us to, it is not, we won't necessarily have kind of the immediate pleasures, but we may have something that goes much deeper. Or, say, I mean, I'm not against good food and good movies or good music. I mean, this stuff is all great, but Christ calls us to much more than just that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lucas. My next question is that, how will you talk to a person who has a YOLO mindset, you only live once mindset? I mean, how will you talk to them?
Yeah, you only live once. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's, well, first of all, I would just take, if a person believes that, and if they think that's the best way to go for, well, that's kind of, well, I mean, there are two ways. One of them is, well, are you really sure that you only have, this life on earth? Like, what if life extends beyond the grave? Have you ever thought about that? I would challenge that. And yeah, and then I would ask, well, yeah, okay, you only live once. Well, for the sake of argument, I accept that. Why would you still not choose to live the way that Christ wants you to live? What speaks against you living the supposedly one life you have according to Christ's standards? It's not, again, I mean, it's obviously, I don't believe it's true that we live only once. Well, we have one lifetime on this earth, and then, the afterlife awaits us. And so again, we can challenge people in that respect. But then even if it were true that we only have this life, well, that's no reason to say that Christ should be discarded or not taken seriously in the way he called us to live our lives.
All right. Thank you so much, Lucas, for that. Our goal of the channel is to encourage people who are watching. I mean, and to equip them and to for evangelism and all that. So that's
Yeah.
our whole aim. So what are some encouraging words, or what are some encouraging that we can get from your side? I mean, for people who are very new to this apologetics, or
Yeah.
very new to defending their faith, what are some things that you want to tell them?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me see what I can scramble together here. Well, first of all, I think you should be gracious to yourself. Talking through these arguments in real life, on campus or in a cafe or around the family table can be very challenging. You may have read a book by, I don't know, John Lennox or some other apologist, and you feel like, wow, as you read this book, you feel like, wow, yes, this is it. Like, no one can say anything against this. This is, bulletproof. This who could go against that? And then you feel like, you may kind of highlight a quote in the book and you feel like, oh yeah, that's it. And then you go out into these arguments or into a real life conversation and you just go blank. You can't remember anything. And you want to respond, and you nothing but hot air comes out of your mouth, which is, I mean, I've been there, I don't know how many times. So you should be gracious with yourself when this happens, because this happens to everyone. And the right way to tackle this is to, well, first of all, in the situation, you say that you can just be honest and say, well, man, I just can't remember, I've come across this question, but I can't remember, how to respond to it. Give me time, I'll get back to you. I think this is fair. This is completely fine. And then the way to do this is to go home and reflect for yourself. Hey, how could I have done this better? Check the book again you were thinking of, or check the YouTube video again where you took the idea from, but which you can't quite articulate anymore. And this is part of the learning process of doing this. Just be out there, do this thing with real people, get yourself into conversations, be courageous, and when you stumble, well, that's fine. We all do, like everyone does, well, unless you're Jesus. And then go back and reflect on this stuff. So that's one thing. I mean, we really should have the attitude of being learners. Being a disciple of Jesus is to be a learner. That the Greek word for disciple is learner. So it's fine if you don't know everything. You have time. As you do this, you go and you learn. So that's one thing. I would challenge or encourage you to pick up good books. I mean, again, pick up a John Lennox book. He's a pretty good place to start. A Frank Turek book, a very good place to start. Maybe Paul Copan on Old Testament stuff. Talk to people. I mean, I guess you guys probably have resources that you recommend to people. This is good. Follow. There are YouTube channels that are very helpful with material, and again, be gracious towards yourself, and challenge yourself to at the same time to push forward. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. The session was brilliant, Lucas. Thank you so much for answering all of it. Yes,
I enjoyed it.
People who are watching, we will highly encourage you. We encourage you to just go and check out Lucas' channel. It's called Deflate, and we have put the link in the description below, so you can check out all his contents. He has some really good content, and I think he answered a question that is close to my heart. And this question is, who created God? And and he made Trinity so easy. You'll be able to understand Trinity so easily, and it's just a 10 minutes video, I guess, right, Lucas?
Yeah, the video on the Trinity, I think, is like an 8-minute one. And just to tell you guys, I'll have 2 subsequent videos coming up. One will talk about the Trinity in the Old Testament, like how the Old Testament, points towards the Trinity, and another video on how the Trinity pops up in the New Testament. So I think the Trinity is really important for us to wrap our heads around. It's kind of key.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And if you have questions related to theology or anything like that, do check out our channels. We have, we have answered some questions like who created God, or why does a loving God send people to hell, or why is a loving God allowing sufferings? We've answered questions like that, and we've created a playlist where you can check out all these contents. And I think recently we did a session on homosexuality and how to be gracious with people who are in that community. So you can check these contents in our channel. And there are much more things that are coming up, like on how to engage with Muslims. And we are so excited to post those contents too. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, thank you.